On air is understandable politics. Hello, this is becoming a troubling tradition. At the end of the year, Kiev talks about the future of Belarus.
Those who fled the country long ago, with those who hate Minsk with all their heart. Exactly a year ago, a similar gathering took place.
In late November, the so-called Belarusian opposition gathered in Kiev for a themed conference called Path to Freedom. The key sponsor was the fund of American financier George Soros, and the execution was handled by members of the terrorist organization Kalinowski Regiment. Most called for consolidation, but there were also calls for an armed march on Belarus.
Time has passed, but the formats and intentions remain the same.
The same explosive mix again speaks of violence and even murder.
The next forum was not advertised.
A closed meeting where all insiders couldn't prevent information leaks.
Physically eliminate Lukashenko and transfer hostilities to Belarusian territory. Such issues appeared on the agenda at the suggestion of notorious participants. More from the forum. Some Ukrainian politicians see no possibility of restoring relations with Minsk and plan to bet on fake democratic forces, representatives of which discussed bloody scenarios right there. Among them was former Ukrainian ambassador to Belarus, Igor Kizim. Quite the company.
To understand the full scale of this semantic tragedy, we'll just show who the fugitives hang out with and seriously discuss the development of Belarus. Potential partners, God forbid, of course, their biographies and portraits, just the facts. You draw conclusions. Goncharenko will get punched for his provocations at the start of his career. He'll get a ticket to political life by participating in a bloody massacre.
Odessa, May 2014. In the trade union's house, anti-Maidan supporters burn alive. While people suffocate in toxic smoke, the future MP streams from the streets of Odessa.
This is the entrance to the Odessa Regional Trade Union building. These are the columns. I'm approaching the building itself, which... Here's the entrance, the burnt entrance to the building. I hope something is visible there. This is all happening right now at this moment in Odessa.
The unprincipled activist is actively used on oligarch-funded TV channels. One appearance on Savik Schuster's live show against the backdrop of burning tents. Goncharenko's phrase, "These are the remnants of the separatist camp burning," will cause a storm of applause in the studio.
These are the remnants of the separatist camp burning. I don't know if you can see. The remnants of the separatist camp near Kulikovo, on Kulikovo Field, and near Kulikov Sting.
After the tragedy, Goncharenko, as if nothing happened, will hype over the corpses.
Goncharenko, along with Maidan activists, entered the building. They walked through the corridors, examined the bodies, turned them over, searched their pockets, looking for passports of Russian and Transnistrian citizens. At the same time, they streamed and took photos with the corpses. Goncharenko was then a deputy of the Odessa Regional Council. I assume he was informed in advance about what was being prepared.
In an interview, he will confidently say, "We cleared Kulikovo Field of separatists."
And standing over the charred bodies, he will joyfully report to Ukrainian media about the suppression of the separatist rebellion.
On this day, radicals killed 48 Odessans and another 250 were injured.
Documents. Documents.
To change sides like that requires skill. Just a couple of years before the bloody events, political turncoat Goncharenko, along with his father, was an active supporter of the Russian world idea.
Here's his quote.
We spoke, speak, and will speak in Russian. We thought, think, and will think in Russian. Our children will know Russian literature. We know well who fought against fascism and who shot our fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers in the back. We will never forget this. We must stop the invasion of Nazism on the blessed land of Ukraine.
He is part of the Russian Bloc Association, which later joined Viktor Yanukovych's Party of Regions.
The most important thing for them is historical memory. And when a few years ago, unfortunate politicians began rewriting history textbooks, started presenting us with new heroes, it insulted our veterans. It caused a split in Ukrainian society.
Goncharenko actively opposes forced Ukrainization, wears St. George ribbons, sings Katyusha, and even goes to study in Moscow. He will receive a diploma in economics and financial management from the Academy of National Economy under the government of the Russian Federation.
Amid political ambitions, he even stopped communicating with his father after losing to him in the Odessa mayoral election and sixth pocket city media on his own relative.
And then it was simple. In 2012, Goncharenko ran for the Verkhovna Rada, but lost again. A year later, he abruptly left the Party of Regions, announced support for Euromaidan, and delivered that very unprincipled performance in Odessa. PR. On the dead.
Since then, the weather-vane Goncharenko has been a fierce Russophobe who found a new patron, the fifth president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko.
I haven't met a politician more despised by Odessans. Probably, looking at Goncharenko, the organizers of Euromaidan thought this one is ready for anything, and they weren't wrong.
The game was worth it for Goncharenko.
Soon he will finally become a deputy of the Verkhovna Rada from Poroshenko's party, and later join the permanent delegation of the parliament in PACE. From joyful streams and photos against the backdrop of people burned alive to the European platform will take only a year.
PACE will not only not be a barrier to boorish behavior, but will become Goncharenko's favorite stage for antics. He comes in a t-shirt, Putin is Hitler, and of course in rubber gloves, a protest against the Skripal poisoning, which by the way was never proven. For the show, Ukrainian politicians of course thank him, calling him Poroshenko's last clown.
In 2021, Goncharenko will once again brazenly break all speaking rules, unfurl the Ukrainian flag, and demand other deputies look at it. The head of PACE will not tolerate such impudence. To the applause of the hall, he will shut the mouth of the zealous upstart and ask him to leave.
This is simply incredible. Turn off his microphone. This is not the first time you have grossly abused your right to speak. Please sit down or leave the hall. I will react very harshly to such situations because this is not the first time you have done this in an extremely unacceptable manner.
The Ukrainian provocateur can't sit still at home.
Recently, he came to Georgia to distribute Maidan, teach locals what language to speak, and shamefully run from any question.
What are you doing here? Who are you? A person.
A person?
I just know you're a politician. From Ukraine.
Interesting.
What are you doing here? If you speak English, they speak Ukrainian.
The executioner of the Ukrainian people came to help Georgians so that they would have it like in Ukraine. Just like in 2014, the ghoul Misha Saakashvili came to Ukraine to help Ukrainians follow the path of Georgians as of 2008. Misha succeeded then, and now hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are dying for the interests of the British King and the Washington Committee. The fate of Georgians will be decided in the coming weeks.
Before the Belarusian presidential elections in 2020, Goncharenko couldn't resist and initiated the creation of the Interfactional Association for Democratic Belarus. With such a trail of exploits, he would be better off staying silent.
Goncharenko threatened Lukashenko with reprisal in his Telegram channel after the head of the Belarusian state congratulated the Ukrainian people on the country's Independence Day. The deputy wrote that Lukashenko would hang on a pole on the next Ukrainian Independence Day.
Goncharenko is just a loudmouth. He's just loud. He's ineffective. I wouldn't say he's a politician who has any significant influence in Ukraine or on any processes in Ukraine. No, he's just a blogger. That is, everything he does, he films for TikTok. He sits in the Verkhovna Rada surrounded by 3 phones and streams everywhere. This is a politician who does everything for likes. Under Yanukovych, he defended the Russian language, was the most Russian person. After Maidan, he became the most anti-Russian person. That is, he doesn't care. This person chases hype, and it's through hype that he gains popularity. But to say he has any influence? No.
We don't know if the MP was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, but his empty threats led nowhere.
Except that Goncharenko's sympathizers began to dwindle.
Alexey Goncharenko is a typical attention seeker, a hunter for attention at any cost. In 2023, he even attacked the Security Service of Ukraine, accusing the SBU of wiretapping. Alexey was advised to cool down and reminded of the Russian passport he never surrendered.
At the start of the war, Goncharenko zealously ran around Kiev with a gun and called for Russian journalists to come.
But talking is not the same as doing. And the freak first sent his son to study in the Netherlands.
Our husbands die at the front so he can relax in Amsterdam. You don't understand? It's different. No shame, no conscience. Why don't you, Alyosha, send him to the front? Why are there different rules for you? People reacted to the deputy's joyful message.
And then he gladly led the Ukrainian delegation to Pace.
In France, far from home,
Goncharenko returns to Kiev to participate in Verkhovna Rada sessions, appear on television, and at such democratic forums where he proposes to drown even more people in blood. A true democrat with a Russian world soul.
Another participant in the Kiev gatherings with fugitives is Sergey Sobolev. He is called the Grey Cardinal of Ukrainian politics.
a parliament veteran, he began his career back in 1990 and became one of the first MPs to retain his mandate to this day.
According to general opinion, Sergey Sobolev is the real Grey Cardinal of the Ukrainian parliament. His long-term survival in the Verkhovna Rada is explained by cunning and unscrupulousness. Many know that Sobolev is aware of all the schemes in politics and can organize the necessary number of votes for a bill or sink it in a matter of hours.
In terms of media presence, he lags behind Goncharenko, but he's also done his share of deeds.
A trail of corruption scandals, of course, exists, as with any normal Ukrainian politician.
He has the reputation of a big fixer, feared and respected by Yulia Tymoshenko herself. He is accused of stealing money from the Communist Party and covering the interests of the Ukrainian oligarchy.
Sobolev is the deputy of the Fatherland Party, in other words, the right hand of Yulia Tymoshenko, the one who went to Dubai for vacation during the war.
Sobolev is also fond of calling for military coups and the removal of the Belarusian leader.
He did this last year at a similar forum in Kiev. Illustration, it must be mandatory. And then illustration, and don't be afraid of it. Yes, illustration with profit, without a doubt. But the illustration is very harsh and cruel, if you want.
A typical Russophobe became famous by causing a scandal back in 2012.
He didn't like that at Russia Day in Kiev. The Ukrainian song Raspriagate Chlopchikone was performed.
A couple of years later, Sobolev almost got a sentence for fakes about the Ukrainian army.
People's deputy Sergey Sobolev, claiming that a regular bullet pierced a body armor plate, misled the public. Such statements can be regarded as provocative actions aimed at undermining the army's authority, creating panic among the servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine who are serving on the front line.
Malicious tongues said that Sobolev was simply offended that he couldn't get a contract with the Ministry of Defense.
One way or another, the politician faded into the background and took a radical position. Cutting Russians is the politest expression in the arsenal of a person with a Russian surname. Today, information emerged that a Ukrainian drone crossed the border and was forcibly landed near Brest.
What can you say about this? Can this be considered espionage? Ah, correspondent. It's hard to call you a correspondent. You know, you're a propagandist, it seems to me. Well, nothing more. And you make noise because there's a lot. You heal people. And something else. But by doing this, you're making a very bad move right now. I'm telling you right away. I'll be writing a note tomorrow. I'm gonna work on Monday. You'll just get, well, additional promises. Now the next thing. Your ambassador, when he comes here, our imperiality will be completely different. We're starting a diplomatic war. Do you want this?
Another participant in the gathering is Ihor Kizim.
We remember him for numerous espionage scandals. On October 25, 2017, the KGB of Belarus detained Ukrainian Pavlo Shiroyko. The charge was espionage. Kizim calls it all a provocation.
I'm sure that not only the deputies of the Ukrainian embassy, not only Ukrainian automatics were engaged in the first activity in Belarus. It should be understood that if the embassies of the European Union, the USA, and Britain were engaged in subversive activities in Ukraine in 2014 to overthrow the government, then I am sure that we are engaged in the same activities on the territory of Belarus. And here we can only wish the Belarusian special services good luck in keeping all these so-called diplomats under strict control, because it is through these characters that funding went.
Kizim's time in Belarus and after is an era of nastiness for our country.
Border guards constantly report caches with explosives, detonators, and other military hideouts. Since 2017, Kizim insists that this is all a setup by Minsk. But denying the obvious will become difficult from 2021 when Semyon Semenchenko, a former Ukrainian deputy, testifies in court.
All these people were in Ukraine, and I, including on the instructions of the main premier of the Ministry of Defense. We shared experiences with him.
All of Kizim's diplomatic legacy in 6 lines.
Ukraine was the first to impose sanctions against Belarus to economically strangle the country. In 2020, under their supervision, the terrorist Avtukovich's gang operated. Their special services prepared channels for smuggling weapons and explosives into Belarus. At the beginning of the special military operation in Ukraine, Belarusian truckers were taken hostage. The Kiev regime was preparing sabotage on the railway and attempts to destroy military infrastructure.
According to the KGB of Belarus, more than 40 channels for smuggling weapons and explosives from Ukraine to Belarus were stopped just last year. The committee eliminated an SBU network of 20 people. And similar discoveries continue.
Kizim, along with fugitives, discusses another plan of aggression against Belarus at the forum.
To provoke our specialists and youth to move to Ukraine. After all, after the war, the population needs to be restored somehow. The forum participants propose doing this at the expense of Belarus.
The proposal, well, let's say only causes laughter, because if Belarusian relocators leave Minsk, they probably want to go somewhere west. Countries with a higher standard of living, not to a country completely destroyed by war, where human rights are violated, where you can get into serious trouble for speaking Russian, even officially from the authorities, and in principle, where nothing is guaranteed to them. Therefore, the likelihood of this is extremely low, but I assume that this official needs to generate some informational noise to earn his salary in Kiev. And he's doing this.
Such gatherings are a perfect illustration of who the fugitives communicate with and try to work with.
They fooled people in 2020, and now they show their true face, not hidden behind political technology tricks.
Seize power at any cost, or at least get more grants.
What interests of Belarusians are there?
The diagnosis of the fugitives is quite obvious.
For them, patriotism has long become homeland phobia. That's why they wander from city to city in search of shelter, at least for the duration of the forum.
Fortunately, this is just a separate manifestation of Ukrainian reality.
Marginals have always been there and will always be. But reasonable people, society, politicians, and the military understand that normal relations need to be built with Minsk. You can't always destroy everything.
Initially, Belarus's position was constructive and positive. Despite very difficult trials, which in Belarus are actually the maximum effort is made to prevent such a massive slaughter and to stand against Western countries, which, through hybrid aggression and expansion, want to take control of as much territory as possible. And therefore, from the point of view of the Ukrainian people, this position is objective, constructive, adequate, and in fact, conscious.
And even despite the outbreaks of inadequate violence advocates, the president of Belarus repeatedly offers to reconcile and talk.
The Ukrainian people are dear to us.
We will also have to overcome the fires set by the West in the region together.
But you can't confuse kindness with weakness.
Minsk's doors are open for dialogue, but not for caches in bloody war. Goodbye.